How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're talking about the sort of general controversies going around in cEDH at the moment. Kicked off the past 2 weeks, I guess, at this point, week and a half, something like that. And what I would lump together as disruptive player behavior in events, really just things that we've allowed to continue to exist in our game that has hit a breaking point where it hit the unfortunate cEDH discourse virality part of anything that blows up in our community, where general Magic people who don't really know what's going on at all feel the need to comment on it. Some of these issues are unrelated. The main things that have happened the past couple weeks were, in one weekend, we sort of had the 11-hour game, which is infamous now in cEDH forever. Temujin getting to play in and win the Black Lotus Invitational at LandGo, which I think is mostly unrelated to this. Is probably the one I'm going to talk about the least, because I feel like that one's just pretty cut and dry. Either you think cheaters should get to play after a fairly short amount of time, or you don't. And there's not really a lot of swaying I'm going to try to do on that. And what started as a discussion on Wounded Satellite making some unclean plays, and then also maybe yapping a newer player into making some misplays in their top pod at LandGo, and has now become a, hey, is Wounded actually a cheater? Because he is very regularly making minor misplays that are always beneficial to him. And I do think at least two of those discussions are very closely related, where there is a theme, and I've talked about this in my, I think, Heisenberg top 16 breakdown, where I mentioned just what I described as psychopathic player behavior, with top level players on stream lying to each other, threatening basically their real world relationships, and just exhibiting and showcasing a part of cEDH that makes the format incredibly unappealing and is like the highlight that we see when you're tuning in for what you expect to be the cleanest, most high level gameplay. You are finding Freedom Waffle and Gold Sabertooth and Wounded Satellite talking nonstop every single time anything is put on the stack in a very disruptive way, where they're borderline misrepresenting their board state and just trying to confuse and make everybody miserable.
That's the deal.
We're gonna bounce this say, right? You've done one piece of that.
I can just hear Evan in the background. He is angle shooting even harder than Max, so let's not mess around here.
I mentioned, like in this tweet that I have on the screen right now, I'm generally very happy with. I'm actually having a great time playing. I had a really good time at LandGo. I went to a pretty stacked silver event this past weekend. A lot of players I know had a very good time there, and just generally having a pretty good time in the current metagame. And I'll probably be talking about the metagame too. It's been shaking up a little bit. It's been really interesting seeing like the rise of Rogthras and things like that. But a lot of that has been overshadowed with a lot of these weird controversies that, again, I think are just really related and are really about something that we can help mitigate and try to do a better job of taking control of and preventing from happening. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, let me know down below if I rambled way too much, because this is very unscripted and I just know I have to talk about these things, and I'm not really seeing a lot of people do much more than tweet, and then someone shows up to defend another person and that doesn't really get anywhere, and it just talks about an 11-hour game, which I don't think really matter. I don't think any of these individual incidents are that important or that interesting to me. Hearing the 11-hour game, I barely even had a reaction to it. I just knew that Gold Sabertooth was probably in it. We'll preface this video again, like I tend to do with my cheater videos or just general controversy things, by saying, leave these people alone. Even if any player I mentioned in this video was intentionally doing all this stuff maliciously and was just trying to ruin the game, doesn't mean that you should harass them. That's just straight up worse than making someone not have a good game of cEDH. Like, that's just much worse behavior. And the whole point is that we want to improve what's happening in the community, and the community to be a good place, and that when people see cEDH, they want to come to it. And you messaging these people or doing whatever directly goes against that, and is just very immoral and maybe illegal, depending on the extent that you take it to. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product. Get anything that you want, really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. All right, so a lot of this drama started with this Reddit post on the Salt City, whatever, Showdown 10K, where an 11-hour game, stream is gone because YouTube doesn't save streams this long. But you see lots of people in here who watched it talk about it. Take some of it with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of very similar accounts where the game took 11 hours in the top 4. Primarily, it seemed like there was a Rogthras player who was trying to win, and there's a big stack, but not a crazy stack. And that Gold Sabertooth just kept talking and talking and talking and talking. 10 plus minutes on decisions according to this. allegedly antagonizing him, bullying him to take faster game actions. One reason I didn't want to talk about this is because I wasn't going to spend 11 hours going over a stream just to fact check this because it's insanity. But what is definitive is it seems like Tim Gold Sabretooth spent a very long time stretching this game out, trying to just make it as long as possible so that he could force a draw or try to convince the pod to let him win instead of getting a tie so that he could go get a flight. This is not cool tournament behavior. It's not logistically feasible tournament behavior. And it's led to one of the bigger controversies we've had, especially, post ban of in our format, and a lot of bad press. I'll say, I guess, reporting my biases. My experiences with him have been overwhelmingly positive. He gave me cards to help me get back into the format after I had to sell all my cards, and has just been very generous and promoting of the community and niche communities within it. And all of that is very good. And that's been my experience with him. I will also say that my experience watching Tim in these events is one of the things that has tarnished or lowered my opinion of tournament cEDH as a focus of our format, because watching top level gameplay is so miserable because of stuff like this. I basically first started thinking about this as an issue watching Tim play in the top 16 of the Mana Vault, the 10 duels event that I went to, where he's just talking nonstop and breaks a deal on camera. That's been kind of a track record that he's built. But this sort of gameplay, one isn't gameplay, and like it wasn't this crazy shocking thing to me to hear about this game because I'd already seen this. I've seen Tim do this in every top pod that I've watched of his recently, where it just is this, where there's no gameplay happening, it's just talking. Especially you get some of these other players in there that are also there to yap, like Freedom Waffle, Wounded, whatever. I think a lot of them do kind of similar things. Obviously this is to a crazy extent, but I do think there is this sort of stretch the game out, make it miserable, keep it disruptive, make it hard to tell what's happening sort of thing that especially higher level players kind of tend to do, where they make the game state so unclear and everything happening so just hard to keep up with, and they feel like they just come out on top, and trying to coast off of their ability to continually understand a board state and angle shooting questionably legal stuff to keep it happening. And obviously some of the stuff that's mentioned here, I can't confirm because I haven't watched the thing and I don't know if we will ever be able to, but it's not cool behavior. And again, like I said, Tim only ever had positive interactions actually with any of these players that I might mention this video. I don't think I've interacted much with Temujin, but again, we're not really talking about that. But their competitive personas, if you will, are unbearable and untenable. We can't keep it going on in the format. And like I mentioned, this wasn't super shocking to me because I keep seeing this and I knew this was going to keep being an issue. I mentioned in the Heisenberg video, you have judges sitting right there that aren't keeping the gameplay moving, and players also seemingly not making slow play calls. So I don't even really think there is this, it's like this big tipping point breaking moment of the format. It just is a very viral clickbaity version of what we've been seeing and what was inevitably going to be an issue. And you can go through this thread and hear more about it. Again, some of it read with a grain of salt. I didn't get to watch it again, but I wouldn't think that he is just I don't think he's been faking being a very chill, cool dude. I think, as is the case with a lot of these players, their need to win and their way to go about doing it is too much and can't be allowed, basically. I think this is just crazy. And a lot of it is just logistical things that players as well as TOs need to be aware of. And we have seen already a little bit of a push against this, where even at like LandGo 10K, there was a 20-minute hard cap on games that went to time after your judge calls and etc. Any extensions you got, you had 20 minutes and then that's it. Nobody wins in 20 minutes, it's a draw. And clearly we also need to apply at least something similar to that into top pods, where it is at a point where we are literally, if I had rented a venue, we have gone over time and we are playing in someone else's rental slot that they have. You need to, as the pod, you need to pay me because I didn't sign up for this to be a 3-day event. I paid for 2 days, but we got to get a whole new shift in here because of you guys. We got a shift change happening. But also even those 3-4 hour games that we're so used to seeing, we don't have to keep putting up with them. Especially if they're not natural, which a lot of them aren't. I do think what we need to do from a TO/judging perspective is keep the gameplay moving. If you have, especially you have a judge in the room, I keep watching these pods where Baldy's in the room and nobody's taking any game action. Step in there, Baldy. Don't, you're yelling in the convention hall. You can speak up in this room too. Not just to call it Baldy. I don't even know if he was at this one, but a head judge name that I know. We don't have to have these old school chess game type events where you just let players slug it out in the room for as long as it takes and let them think as hard as they can to get the most clean gameplay. We're streaming these also, by the way. You want this to actually be not primarily focused on entertainment because it is a tournament and these players paid, usually $100 to come here and compete, but you want them to keep it moving and to ensure that they're not wasting your time, the venue's time, viewers' time to a lesser extent, but also it doesn't hurt to try to make it more stream friendly because it's also only benefiting everybody else. You're just making sure that gameplay's happening. And there's none of this. There's none of this purposely stretching the game out. If I make a deal right now in 2 hours when it comes back up, they won't even remember. And I can just break more deals live on camera. One, I don't think it's a watershed moment or whatever where we've jumped the shark and everything's ruined and oh my God, what are we gonna do? And I don't think it's even speaks to the meta outside of a very specific way that people play or adjust their gameplay to top 16 and top 4 pods. But this play style where you don't really play and you just talk. We have to address it. And it's on, I think, organizers, judges, and players. If you're experiencing something like this in your Swiss pod or whatever, don't feel like a jerk to call the judge. The judge is there and the rules are there to try to help make sure you have a fair game where everyone gets a shot and no one is hogging all the time. Sometimes, yes, some people are going to play a storm turn and it's going to eat up the clock. As long as they're making game actions, yeah, maybe you got turn ordered and they wasted the clock and that sucks. They weren't breaking the rules. Wasting time without taking game actions and are just eating up your part of the clock are being unfair, whether intentional or not. And it's not mean or going to make you a jerk to call that out. And it can be pretty chill. It can be a soft touch like, hey, can we get a game action? We've been sitting here a while. What you want to do? What do we got? And if it keeps happening, saying, I really want to make sure that we all get a chance to win, both for myself and my opponents that we're here with. I'm going to call a judge. If they think slow play's happening, I want to make sure that we can keep this game moving because we only have a limited amount of time and we all pay to be here. So you're not being a jerk. You can direct them to me. You can timestamp me right here and say, no, actually, he was the jerk. He told me to do this. That's fine. I don't care. So this is kind of the first thing that broke through 11-hour game. I don't even think there's that much to talk about other than this is just a peak example of gameplay habits that I mentioned, like they're not taking game actions, blah, blah, blah. And it looks very bad. It makes us being a tournament focused format less likely because if you were to try to get someone invested in cEDH, basically the worst thing you could do is send them a link to the game. Imagine that you try to get one of your friends to play cEDH. You're like, look, hey, there's a top pod going on right now. And you send them a link to this. Do you think that they're going to convert to playing cEDH after seeing this insanity? No. Why would they? Even any 20-minute section, they're probably going to see one game action at best and a bunch of gaslighting about it. This is just to make people, judges, TOs, whatever, aware that we got to clean this up and we have to root it out ourselves because as long as we're not enforcing anything, we are, by our inaction, encouraging players to try to take advantage of this kind of stuff. And you can only really blame yourself. Like, yeah, it's kind of a jerk move to do this. At the end of the day, if you're not going to make rules about it, why shouldn't they do it? Just make some rules. And I've played in events recently where top pod had a time limit, top 16 and top 4, partially just to respect the venue, be reasonable logistically. And that's something I think we should look into anyways. Again, if not a hard time limit, have a judge there who's making sure that we're not going more than 2-3 minutes without a game action. Arguably, it should be quicker than that, but we're seeing way slower. We're seeing 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I would not be surprised if we went an hour at this event with no game action. Don't have to have the judge sitting there intently on every single thing, but they don't hear an actual I cast, I pass, I do this for a minute or two. Yeah, they should probably step in and say, hey, I need a game action player. So what's going on? So that was the first kind of controversy we had. Let's move on. After that, kind of alongside it, but in terms of what people are discussing, outside of, big YouTubers saying, OMG, cEDH, she's been ruined, mate. We've got Wounded Satellite, and we got this long thing of timestamps at the Land Go event and stuff that he's doing that is questionable. Certainly some beneficial misplays, and a lot of them have been pointed out at multiple games now at this point, multiple events. And you might say, oh, you just hating on Wounded Satellite. There have been 2 controversies before this I didn't talk about with Wounded. I recused myself from talking about them because I didn't know a lot and because action had been taken. Also, Wounded got DQ'd. Why do I need to talk about it? Somebody did something wrong. They got in trouble. There's no need for me to call for action. It's literally just clicking to get views, right? Which I could have done. I could have made free money off of it. Right now, I want a call to action. Maybe not necessarily something against Wounded because, again, it's kind of unclear. It's hard to read the intent in this, but it has happened a lot, and I think players should be aware of it. You should be aware that very high-level players that you might respect and might cut some slack are making a lot of gameplay errors that are almost exclusively beneficial to them, and you got to be aware of that because best case scenario mean that the gameplay is not as clean as I thought at this top level of the format, and I really need to be on top of what other people are doing because some of the best players in the world are making clear gameplay issues that are very much impacting the board state and in the game state and the results of the win. When you have something like, Wounded and an event after this, activating Breeze Caller, returning the land to hand, and then saying, actually, I'm not going to do it, but then also putting the land back, but then still having the land untapped and just netting free mana. Is it intentional? Is it malicious intent? I don't know. Can't say that definitively. What I can say is there's a mistake and it's affected the game state and it affected that game for sure. And if it keeps happening, got to be aware of that. You got to at least be cautious about everybody you play against. You really don't know what your opponents are doing, but at the very least, you got to keep the gameplay clean. That's all this really is just there's disruptive elements that I think a lot of these players are employing. Like I mentioned, you got stuff like Freedom Waffle basically having a game go so long that he's able to get Tim to make a deal that is actively saying, hey, Tim, I need you to make an agreement that you'll lose this game. And then when Tim goes to realizes that, oh, well, the game state was kind of muddied up and I didn't realize that was a mistake. I guess I have to do this to have a chance. And then just say like, hey, I'm going to never trust you again. Our friendship is ruined now if you do that. That's also not cool too. That's pretty wild behavior to have in a game.
So he says he needs to draw it. So I'm gonna bounce his one.
You breaking the deal? We made a specific deal that you said you'd cast only creatures you drew, Mox Diamond, and Emerald. You can break it if you want, but we did make a very specific deal.
I'm gonna die. I gotta win.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah, we
won't trust in the future.
don't trust me in the future. Man. If you need to, not trust
I
me.
mean, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, go for it. If you need to not trust me, don't trust me in the future.
That's what it's worth?
That's what it's worth. I'm gonna cast a time sieve. I need to crunch my own One Ring to not die.
Mine too. Unfortunate.
I have to try to not die.
You don't have to lie.
Yeah.
You don't have to try to not lie. That's some of the deals, right?
And so there's just a lot of these disruptive elements of keeping really unclear board states, tapping, untapping, back and forth, and then just netting mana out of nowhere from a lot of these players. I think the more you watch these streams, the more intently, especially a lot of these players are playing decks that are very busy, you know, for intentionally or not, of like your Marniuses, your Kinnons, your Rog Thrasses that build very big board states that are very hard to keep up with. Got Tim playing with the lands up front. Literally just shouldn't be allowed on its own. That one kind of just triggers me because like that's just, you can be the best person in the world. You still have to play by the rules. But you just got to be aware that there's a lot of this stuff. And, you know, Scoopface tweeted out this and there are some responses to that. And then there was a thread that Shauna did kind of pointing out more timestamps and just people not playing. 3 minutes, nothing happens. Got to have a think. I got a trigger. Doing all this, doing some math. You got to keep playing. You have to keep the game state moving. And again, this isn't some big thing. How do we fix this? Just the rules already. Just say judge or start hiring judges who will pay attention when this is happening. I don't know if typically in top pods, the judges just, as long as the player doesn't say anything, they don't care about slow play. I really don't know.
Again, if I were another player in this pod, especially Pigeon, I'd be calling slow play and be like, what are you doing?
Sorry, I need to do actual like math here and think for a second. I apologize for the
If you
time
need to
this
do
is
math,
taking.
then what you can do
Sorry,
is
it's a complicated position.
take some die and put them down on your board and count mana.
6
Or
minutes.
you can use a
I
pad
have
and
not
write some
used
stuff
this
down.
yet. I have 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 accessible mana.
There's some clear shenanigans happening, and most of it I think can be answered by very easy to implement logistics changes with tournament organizers saying, hey, we're gonna have hard caps on how long these rounds get to go, and we're also gonna be making sure in these top pods, if it's feasible, especially if we have a judge sitting there, that they're making sure that the gameplay keeps moving because we only rented this venue for so long. We need to be respectful to our staff that we paid to be here, everyone else who has agreed to compete and who you might be, you know, kind of robbing their time of and making this a unfair, unenjoyable experience. It really just benefits everyone who has good intentions. And yeah, the fidgeting stuff, disguising cheating, yeah, this is bad. I think Shauna voiced this kind of aggressively and she made an apology video about it and she's very mature and all that. I honestly don't think it was that necessary. I don't think she did anything wrong. Just preface what you say by saying, hey, don't harass these people, but they're doing stuff that they shouldn't be allowed to do. And I do think there's a little bit of, hey, someone called me out for doing stuff I don't want to do and now people know about it. You're getting me harassed. Don't do stuff you're not allowed to do. I didn't tell them to harass. She didn't tell anybody to harass you. Shauna's intention wasn't, hey, everybody make sure to go like, comment, subscribe, and harass people. No, I think she just wanted to point it out. And, you know, maybe she voiced it strongly. You know, maybe some TO will do it in a check on, especially the wounded stuff, because it is more about gameplay where the intention might have been to benefit yourself by, you know, bending the rules, which is, you know, that's all I'm saying, but that is the definition for cheating. But it is an intention-based thing. But like the Tim stuff and anybody else stretching out games, being really weird and kind of crazy with making the game state hard to parse, that is just something that we can already kind of address. There's no need to say, you Gold Sabertooth are banned from cEDH events because you talked a lot one time, which we let you do. We all sat in a room and watched you talk a lot and we let it happen. And because of that, you are banned. Why? You guys did it. Clearly, somebody must have wanted to watch him play for 11 hours. Why else would it have happened? So I think most of it is just logistic stuff. And then you being aware of your rights as an American or I guess European. I cover all of them. Japanese. Sort of what you're due, what is fair to you as a competitor. Keeping your players honest, making sure you call a judge. Don't feel pressure just because there's a content creator there or someone else you know in the community. You can see how that could affect some people. And if it's me or one of the play to win guys or anybody in your pod, and maybe you're like, oh my gosh, they're so cool and handsome. I could see how that could be, lead you to maybe give them a little bit of leeway. But they should also be there, myself included, for good, clean gameplay. And that means if we're slow playing or doing something odd, you should call us out. Only people who have negative intentions would be upset by that, especially outside of the moment where they're just like, oh man, I really just needed to just think 5 more seconds and I would have saw the line. I don't think Shauna did anything wild here. And then there's also the thread that even Eisenherz went in, and he went even more aggressively than Shauna did, pointing out a lot of the mistakes and incidents. And this is more about a thread of, is Wounded intentionally cheating because you're a player who presents yourself as like one of the best in the world and you do very well, and your patience for other people making what you might deem suboptimal plays tends to be much shorter than you are being often given. If the Loomer player was the one making all these mistakes, I bet the leeway might have been a little bit differently as an unknown person. And that's something we all got to be aware of. It's just personalities in the space and letting them get away with too much. That includes me, includes anybody, especially if they're, making money from this community or just have more of a platform, that you just be aware that those players not necessarily are doing anything wrong, but that they're being held to the same standards, if not higher, than everybody else.
I use habitation. I mean, actually, sorry. I can take this back as well. Nothing's happened.
Cast on the stack. It's definite. I passed on the cast. He passed on the cast. 100%.
Baldy, would you mind clarifying? Because not a single thing has taken place. I'm just.
He showed me a card. That's information.
I'm opening up a conversation.
That is it.
Get in there, Baldy.
I didn't say I'd like to take it back. I said, I'm open to having a conversation.
No.
I said, I can't take this back. I didn't say I would like to take
Sorry.
it back. I said, I can't take it back.
I don't think so.
Because I can just have a conversation.
Can't weasel your way out of this breach. Let it resolve.
I think most of this issues we as a grassroots community can just clean up. I think we can probably come to some agreement on, even if there isn't like a top deck or whatever making the rules for the invitational, like a circuit going forward. We might see announcements on that soon. If there's no leadership to point to like really clean it up, I think we can come to a pretty easy to arrive to way to more uniformly deal with slow play, deal with maybe questionable / aggressive politics, ensure that games conclude in a reasonable time, even without bans or unbans. This isn't really a meta game issue. Games are a little bit slower now. We know that. And there's some lopsided stuff with turn order. That isn't really the issue with any of these. These are players pushing things, either intentionally or accidentally taking advantage of how complex the game states can be, really shifting attention to other players and just doing all these little things that don't lead to good, clean gameplay, and that have currently led to us looking really bad as a format, despite, kind of like I started with, saying that stuff I think is pretty good metagame wise. I think it's been really interesting. I think cool stuff like Roderick Thras's Rise and how you counter that has been overshadowed by 11-hour games that don't really matter. It kind of appeared to me also that the Loomer player got a little robbed. That was the thing that kind of first drew me into this, where I wanted to talk about it, was seeing player kind of eat up all of the game time and not allow other people to come back at it. And that's another thing that I think kind of be aware of, is that if you feel weird about calling a judge, you feel like you're going to appear as a jerk, these other players who are, maybe taking advantage of eating up a lot of the time and not giving everyone else leeway, they just benefit from it because they will eat up the time and will call a judge and will say that they're slow play and will be right on top of you. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, fight fire with fire, be a jerk, but it's just keep them honest and don't let them get away with it. If someone else is taking a reasonable amount of time, say, hey, I think it's fine. We really let you get away with a lot here. I think it's only fair we give him a little bit of time to think. I usually try to be like that. Especially I take a good bit of time on a line and then, it doesn't quite get there or whatever, or in the tank, I'm just like, hey, we just took a while. You haven't done much here. Then we can give you a little bit of leeway on the timer. We'll let you know if it gets a little bit past that, maybe we can have a discussion then on slow play, or we'll call a judge to make sure we're all playing clean. We're all being reasonable. I think there was a little bit of that with the Loomer on that top pod. I heard different reports in the thing, but that was something that Shauna and I think Scoots had mentioned. That's the thing that upset me, is seeing, especially from what I heard, a new player at the event and they're like, oh, we're going to help you. And then they grab their dice and start playing with them like a fidget spinner. That's the thing that bothers me. I don't care about an 11-hour game. I care about a player getting a fair shot, especially, when they're just a normal guy. They're one of their first events ever, and somebody who's there all the time and is always topping and has a history of being very disruptive to them and not giving them a chance, from my perspective there, while also continually making lots of gameplay errors that benefit you, is unacceptable. And not that you have to, new people you should have the same expectations for, but you're not following those expectations. You're slow playing. And when that's happening, it's not cool. And then we even saw like Wounded and Pigeon get a little bit at each other. Like, you take a long time, I take a long time. If you want to watch that one, which is fair. If someone else is eating a lot of time and we're not going to have the judge ever care about slow play, we might as well just say, okay, everybody gets a lot of time, which is why I think we should do the opposite and say everybody gets a reasonable amount of time and keep the game moving. So I felt a little bad for the Lemora. I felt like they kind of got yapped to death. Again, also, if players can't take game actions while you're doing their stuff, whether they want to represent that or not, when it seems clear that they can't, let people play. I honestly think there might need to be a ruling, and maybe you can do this already, of just like, hey, judge, I don't need them out of the room, but I would like to be able to play my line without constant disruption. Can you just have the table players kind of step away so they can hear what I'm doing? And if they have interaction, do it. But while they're discussing, I would like to be able to play. And it's disruptive to me. I don't think that's asking for a lot. And I think if you you get people to step away from the game, you probably say, hey, you just need to be quiet now. Clearly, you don't have anything to contribute here. There can't be that much context when you don't even have a land to tap to reset priority. Maybe just keep it down. You said your piece, let them go. When the game state changes, do something else. But when we're like mid-Loomer flip and we're stopping the game, I want to start a conversation. It's a little bit much. And again, it's not about pointing fingers to a single player because they did this one time. I don't want this to be in the game at all. I don't want people to be in positions where, they're not on camera. Because that's the other thing. This is just like, we just happen to have 3 of these things get caught on camera the past, week or 2. There's lots of this kind of stuff that doesn't get caught. What I want is a cultural change enforced by the rules where players aren't really in as much of a position to do this. And I think it should be made clear probably in every player meeting, like, you can call a judge to talk about slow play, aggressive behavior. Why did I say it like that? Behavior? Aggressive behavior, too much politicking. You can call a judge to say, I think too much politicking has happened. I would like to take a game action. Players aren't letting the game state progress. Let people know that they can do that. I think that's a big thing too, especially for newer people. Every event is somebody's first event. So fostering that sort of environment that makes sure that we're encouraging good gameplay focused action and fair play in our events is, I think, the most important thing that we can do. Makes people feel more comfortable, knowing that they're allowed to do that and knowing that they shouldn't be shunned for making those kind of things. I've never been upset for a judge call on somebody. That it's always acceptable. So I think we can clean that up. I just, again, wanted to highlight that part too, because this is the one thing that really stuck out to me is like, I feel like somebody's not getting a fair shot and nobody's calling a judge despite whatever's happening. And we have 50 timestamps in the comments of illegal game actions being taken place, not by the person getting harassed right now, getting spoken over. I should phrase it a little bit more gently. That part bothered me a good bit too. And I hate seeing that. So I don't have some crazy truth bomb to drop on you. I just want players to be aware, like I said, why I ended up making a video on this, whereas maybe I wouldn't have previously, is that I think every person is just a little responsible for making sure that we all have a good time, that the gameplay is good, that tournaments are welcoming, exciting spaces from just the lobby con all the way up to the top 4 pod, that people feel comfortable coming back, and that everyone feels like they got a fair shot. Maybe it wasn't their day, maybe they got unlucky, but they can't point to any one player and say like, man, that guy just really ruined my day by taking advantage of a thing that the judges didn't even really care about, or that I didn't feel comfortable calling out and no one else in my pod did, and I feel like I kind of got robbed. And after the fact, I know I should have done it, but I should have made a call, and I just didn't feel comfortable because maybe they're a player in a well-known position. I just trust them, even though, they're just a guy on the internet. So I just want everybody to have a good, fair shot, call judges, especially in those top pods, try to keep the game state moving. I think it only benefits everyone. It makes the stream better, it makes the gameplay better, all of that. And tournament organizers, I'm curious and excited to see what you're going to do to try to just clean some of this up. I think some actions have already been just taken. Again, I don't think somebody needs to get banned. Probably, again, be an investigation or whatever into some of the gameplay stuff that's been goofier, but just don't let people get away with stuff, intentional or not. If they're going to talk for an hour, don't let them. You get like a minute tops. You get to talk. Then you get a game action or not, bud. Gonna pass priority. Nothing that crazy. I actually think the format's in a good spot. This isn't a big complaint about, see, I told you so. They didn't ban Ristic, so now a game takes 11 hours. No, not really. It's mostly just people being weird, and don't accept it, no matter who they are. Yeah, I wish I had a truth bomb to hit you. I told you so on Rockfast, I guess. I can hit you with that. Other than that, yeah, don't let players be weird. And also, if you are one of these players and you are intentionally doing this, not even addressing the people here, just if you're a grinder doing this kind of stuff, being disruptive intentionally, or you've seen it and you have something that you want to highlight so people know. It's not necessarily, I don't want a video to just call out people. It's not really the point. The point isn't that these guys are punished, we got them in cEDH jail. It's that players are aware. Same thing with my cheater videos. The ones I did were highlighting how people cheated so that you can better know what to protect yourself from. Still a great format, still a great community, and I think we're gonna bounce back from this fine. I don't think it's a big deal. If you're mad at me, let me know why. And all that being said, thanks so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.